Hi Darren, thank you so much for joining us today for a Southwest Mutual in Conversation With episode. Before we get started on the three questions, if you could give our viewers, our listeners, a little introduction as to who you are, that would be great.
Sure. Well, hello, Bex, and thank you for your invitation to share a little bit about me and my role. So I'm Darren Arulvasagam, and I'm the head of strategy and partnerships at Southwest Mutual. I've lived in Cornwall for just over 5 years now. I'm married, got 2 children, and a Boston Terrier dog.
That's awesome. Thank you. It's great because I'm learning things about you as well. So our first question is, banks have to offer basic accounts. So is financial inclusion really a problem?
I worked for Southwest Mutual for 3 days a week, and actually my other 2 days a week I worked for a charity called Christians Against Poverty. And actually the two things are quite nicely linked in that my work for the charity is helping people who have fallen into debt for whatever reason. And through that work, I see firsthand some of the issues that our bank is going to be trying to help with in terms of financial inclusion or helping people to manage their money in a better way, in a more intentional way. And it absolutely, despite the fact that banks by the regulators are supposed to offer basic bank accounts, it's really hard for people who need a basic bank account to get one. And that is continuing on even through COVID and pre-COVID. So there's the physical issue of accessing a bank. There's the physical issue of being able to withdraw money, to check balances. There's this kind of belief that anybody and everybody in this country can use digital channels to access and manage their account. And that's just not true. And so in the Southwest, we see a lot of people who are affected by bank closures. And so that financial inclusion piece is really hard for people where that bank has moved away from the town. So again, going back to my charity work, I have clients who banked with, say, NatWest, and the NatWest is now closed. And so from 1 month to the next, they do not know how much money they've got. It could go to a cash point, but a cash point, all you can see is your balance. You can't see the last transactions. So you don't know if the council tax has gone out, or you don't know if the electric has gone out, or whatever it may be. And you speak to a bank, and they're very helpful on the phone, of course they are, but it costs money, or you're assuming that someone's got a phone to be able to do that. So financial inclusion is a big thing for people, and the provision of a basic bank account, unless you've got the right ID, or unless you know how to actually apply, because again, it's either online, or if you go into a branch, you have to make an appointment. And typically a lot of these customers, clients, have chaotic lives, and trying to make an appointment from 1 month away, it just doesn't happen unless you can go in and do it there and then. We see this as an area where things could be better. And so working with debt charities or churches or the job centre, third parties, to housing associations as well, how could we help people to get access to accounts? And then when they've got the accounts, could we actually help them to manage their money in a more intentional way? So think about what's coming in, what's going out, and maybe one of our aims for our product is that we will be able to help people to effectively have jam jars or separate pots to keep their rent from their utilities, from their food budget, and then budget in a clearer, simpler way.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Darren. Yeah, I know that's been a really core part of how I manage my money and how I became more financially literate in my own life, is being able to have that information and to separate that money. So it's great that that's something that South West Mutual is hoping for. Our second question is related actually to some of that face-to-face contact. So with so many bank branches closing and the impact of COVID-19 due to last for many months yet, is face-to-face banking a thing of the past?
Great question. I would say not at all. In my own, so I live in Liskeard in Cornwall, and we're blessed to still have quite a few of the main banks in our high street, but some of the surrounding towns are not so lucky. So either there's one bank left or there's no banks. And through our research of the Southwest, there's plenty of towns like that in each of the 4 counties that we're supporting. But I think COVID has shown us that people really do value that human relationship, being able to go in and talk about their money, go in and open an account, go in and check their balance, and be able to withdraw £4.92 if I've got £4.92 in my account. Not everyone is able to, take out £5 or £10 or whatever. So that I think is really important. Also for people who have queries or problems on their account, that ability to go in and talk to somebody about it, or talk on the phone or talk on video, whatever, is important. But I think we've seen certainly in areas such as Cornwall, people really do value the high street and the ability to go and talk to people. And then as you're in town, it's good for your well-being. It's good to do the walk, fresh air, etc. But you're often going to see people and just pass the time of day. So I think that's it's not an outdated thing. I think we're all seeing the benefit of that at the moment through COVID, and we feel the negative impact of that, where you can't go out when you want to or can't mingle. And so I certainly think it's something here to stay and that we want to get back to. That's not to say that it's how it should always have been. I think there's problems with the way that bank branches are, that they used to be very important buildings in the town. They'd be very a statement of what that bank's all about. So very large, lots of staff in there, and double fronted or something in the bank with a huge safe underneath to hold all the money. Now those kind of things don't need to be there anymore. One of our visions for the bank is to make things really fit for purpose. So design it around the uses that will be happening in that branch. Make it accessible for communities maybe to use it, or other groups, or for us to hold sessions to help people learn about the use of money, or learn about things that are linked to your personal financial status or whatever it might be. But also have maybe a variety of designs for the type of location. So it may be some branches that you or I would recognise from other banks. Some might be smaller hub type solutions that would sit inside something else. So it might be inside a council building, or inside a library, or inside a school. It's almost like a concession idea that you might see in a supermarket or something like that. So it's kind of, this is South West Mutual within something else. The post office have done something like that really well inside W.H. Smith's, or inside a Martin McCall's, or something like that. So it's that kind of idea, but still able to do all of your banking and some of the other sort of advice-based services.
That's amazing. Yeah, your answer really made me reflect on my journey, I suppose, with banking and with understanding my money. And for quite a while, with certain neurodiverse features, being able to talk to somebody in real life, even if it was the same conversation that would have happened online or over the phone, actually being able to have those visual cues made such a difference to how I understood what was going on. So yeah, that's really interesting. So our third and final question is, how will South West Mutual, if granted a banking licence, decide on which products, features and rates to offer? A big question.
It is a big question. It's a big piece of work. So part of my role is to work on that. So head of strategy and partnerships, it's talking to stakeholders who might help us to access certain customer demographics, or where we can partner with them to actually develop or co-develop products and services. So I have been talking to housing associations and local authorities about problem areas that they have. Customers that they have who are struggling with their finances or struggling with the management of their finances. And they'd like a bank like us to be able to help them to serve those customers in a better way. So how can we help them manage it? Clearly, we need to look at what is in the market and where we think there is market failure. So I touched earlier on basic bank accounts, and we think there is ways to improve or the access to those. So customer identification is one of those. There is actually a very prescriptive, well, it's the opposite of prescriptive. It's a very broad list of ID that you can provide to prove who you are. But most of the banks, because of their rigidity, if you like, in their process, will say it needs to be so many from list A or list B. And that might be it's asking you to provide a passport or a driving license, which is fine for a vast majority of population. But there will be people who don't have a passport because they don't travel abroad, or a driving license. So we would like to make sure our process is as wide as possible to allow as many people to have an account. So that's one thing. The other thing is how can we tailor products to really deliver on the things that we think are important as part of our banking. So we want to support the reduction in carbon emissions. We want to make ourselves a green bank. We want to make ethical banking an ethical decision, as opposed to just practical, easy, consumable, if you like. So by choosing to bank with us, you know that your money is not being used to lend to people who are doing things that will be destroying the planet, or you know that we won't be trying to cross-sell you products that are going to make us some money, things like that. We want to be ethical in our I suppose our value that we offer customers. So we need to make sure that those beliefs really filter all the way through into the product terms, conditions, the contract that you sign when you apply for a loan. We don't want that to be 100 pages long. We want it to be really clear and obvious what you're signing up for. And clearly we need to do that within a risk universe, if you like, of making sure that the regulator is happy with what we're doing. And we are a business, so we need to make money, but we need to make that in a fair way. It's really interesting. Earlier this year, the regulators got involved with overdrafts and on bank accounts, and it meant that the rates and fees and charges that were being charged by banks had to change. Now, all the major banks have changed their rates. They all happen to be now around 40% APR. And that just seems really strange as to why does an overdraft cost 40% APR? Some might be 38.9, some might be 40, some might be 30. They've all congregated on that amount. There's no way when a credit card average rate is about 20%, why would an overdraft be 40%? Doesn't make sense. So it's some of those things we're looking at to say, well, why? And on our model, do we need to be up there with everybody else, or can we afford to be somewhere down here? And that's the same look that we're looking at in terms of unsecured loans, on savings rates, and other sorts of fees and charges, because banks typically, historically, have been charging, don't charge for the account, but charge you when you go into an overdraft really heavily, or if you a check gets bounced or a direct debit gets bounced, you get hit with a fee. We want to make things much more open, honest, transparent, and fair. So banking is not free. It shouldn't be seen as free because you are getting a service. But equally, if we're holding your money, you should be receiving interest. So we will be making sure that there is a fee, and it's a fair fee, and you know what you're paying for. But then if certain things happen, we don't want to be penalising you exorbitantly for those things. Again, you'll know where you are. And that applies to business accounts as well as personal accounts. And in return, we want to be able to pay you a fair rate of interest on your money, just as you would if you had it in a savings account. We have this ludicrous thing at the moment where if your money's in your current account, you earn no interest. If you have it in a savings account, which has less functionality, then you earn interest, albeit tiny at this time. But we want to try and get away from you having to have two accounts. Why not just have the one account and it gets interest if you've got money? That's what we're trying to strive towards.
That's really cool. That would be awesome if we managed to get there. Yeah, and it's really nice to know that we're approaching things from a fresh perspective, I suppose, and not carrying that weight of a history of an incumbent bank behind us. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Darren. It's been a really great discussion. I've learned a lot, and I hope our listeners have too. If they want to get in touch with you to discuss anything that you've chatted about, is the best place LinkedIn?
Sure, LinkedIn, or send an email or tweet us via Southwest Mutual. We're a very small team, so it will get to me.